Hi everybody, this is Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au, bringing you my usual weekly edition of the War on Misinformation. Now today the latest data is out on prices, information from a couple of sources which tells us something about what's happened in major markets with pricing in the month of July, although while it's a little bit more positive than we've seen until recently, it doesn't really tell us anything particularly useful because, once again, it's very generalized data. But nevertheless, there is improvement indicated by the figures out today from CoreLogic and out earlier in the week from SQM Research. Turning first to what we see in the new CoreLogic, at the start of every month, they produce, with rather undue haste, I tend to think, prices for the previous month. So they're already telling us what happened with prices in July, although it's very preliminary data. All the sales aren't in yet. And it'll be some time before we can really know what happened truly with prices, but it's a lot more positive than we're seeing in any other month this year. It continues the growing amount of evidence that shows that the price decline in the two biggest cities has come to a halt, and as prices are now starting to perhaps nudge upwards. These figures from CoreLogic tend to indicate that, as do the latest figures from SQM Research. So we have a couple of sources saying similar things. In terms of CoreLogic's home value indexes for July, they're indicating that the house markets are up a little bit. Increases in the month ranging from 0.1% to 0.6% in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Hobart and Darwin. And the same five cities have also had increases in their prices index for apartments. They're also seeing uplift in the regional markets of South Australia, Tasmania and Northern Territory for houses, and a number of other regional markets for apartments. Now, the figures came out a couple of days ago from SQM Research. They have different methodologies, different parameters, but in most instances, similar results. The SQM Research figures indicate both on a weekly basis and on a monthly basis there's been improvement with prices in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Canberra, and I think I mentioned Adelaide. Yeah, so they're both finding some uplift in 5 out of the 8 capital cities, both indicating that Perth's still a little down. Darwin's still struggling, but showing more positive numbers than before. But as I said at the beginning, very generalized figures, and they tend to disguise what's really going on in specific markets. It's only when you do what we do at Hotspotting, when you drill down and look at it on a suburb by suburb, town by town basis, you start to see what's really going on in markets. You know, a generalized figures for an entire city as large as Sydney or Melbourne doesn't really tell you what's going on in the various sub-markets. In Sydney, for example, while most locations prices are down in annual terms, there are some sectors of the market that have been up in the last 12 months, particularly the top end. Any suburb with a median house price above $2 million is more likely to have had a price rise, increase in their median prices than price reduction. And there are also a large number of suburbs, as we've observed in previous analysis that we've done, a large number of suburbs where, while the median house prices are down, in some cases substantially in Sydney, the median unit prices are actually in the same suburbs up. And some quite stark contrast. North Bondi is one that springs to mind, where the median house price is down about 15%, but the median unit price is up more than 10%. We tend to think that's because people have been chasing the more affordable apartment product. Across Australia, when we do our suburb by suburb analysis, we find, for example, that 70% of suburbs in Adelaide have median house prices higher than 12 months ago. Across Hobart and Tasmania, it's 90% of locations have had price growth in the last 12 months. Regional Queensland, 60% of markets are up. Regional Victoria, almost 90% of markets are up in terms of comparing median prices now with 12 months ago. In Canberra, it's almost 70% of suburbs. In Brisbane, it's 2/3, 67%. So, I don't know. Sometimes I think some of these organisations have dodgy apps and the generalized figures they come up with are incredibly misleading and unnecessarily negative, because when you look at on an individual suburb by suburb basis, you get a much different result. I mean, Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, and all those cities, around 70% of suburbs have median prices higher than 12 months ago. How then does CoreLogic come with a figure that says overall Canberra is down in annual terms? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But overall, the latest price data out today from CoreLogic and early in the week from SQM Research shows monthly increases in most of the capital cities and some of the regional markets as well, which, taken with other evidence recently, tends to indicate that the price decline in the bigger cities has come to a halt and now starting to nudge upwards, which isn't a total surprise because we've had so many positive events from property markets feeding into the system lately. Federal election result, the APRA changes, 2 interest rate reductions from the Reserve Bank, which was flowed through to lower mortgage rates and easier finance, as well as the recently legislated tax cuts. Lots of positive things happening, which has resulted in an increase in sentiment, a lot more confidence in the market. People are active again. There's competitive bidding at auctions and the clearance rates are improving. So quite a lot of positivity emerging, and these latest price figures tend to reflect that. Okay, that's it for now. Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au signing off. Let's do it again soon. Bye for now.